سلام كبرات تخاتل ستيت لو مقاشنا من السي امنت عنده إنا حزنا لكم متينا زلنا من السي امنت عنده كبابي نيويورك تقمت كوينا مسانا نشتي حس أرزبال على كتقبريا بمجمر تاقن نفسها خاتلالي مس امنت كقرفكم امنت انكو عاد حمس أحي نزي أقات أمي عدل مهابكون بسم كلهم سمعتنا كمسكنا كيفتو بسم ستيت تخاتلتنا كمون أبتي سوشيال ميديا ناس قدات زكاتاتلو كمسكنا كيفتو انكو عاد حمس أكي امنت.
So thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. And I didn't know if you want me to do an introduction, but Shemay Emnet Andu Bahal, Kataman New York City Ahmed Allahum. I'm involved in the grassroots movements of Yaakil all over the US and global as well, focusing on mobilization of the diaspora, youth diaspora, and as well as advocating for the Eritrean youth in Eritrea. Currently, I sit on the advisory board for Baito Yaakil. I'd have to say I'm the youngest member, but hope to see more young people in there. And I became very outspoken, particularly on social media in the early 2000s, really advocating for the youth of Eritrea after the 1998-2000 war and seeing many families being displaced and really being conscripted into an indefinite national service. That gave a calling for me and started speaking on Facebook. For those of you who know MySpace, I started speaking on MySpace, and now on Twitter, Instagram, and every platform, really advocating for the youth of Eritrea.
صبو امنت يعني لنا نزعل لنا زي ليلة مسخ زجحاب كنا امنت قربتي ابتي كتب لي تصنحكي كملس ببايتو ياكل جلوبال ياكل تساتف في خمد الله هون كتقل تصنعكي اتي نابز درخك مخنيات تي أبز وان زيتن أبارقية وين كتبر كتيو تدلين انتاي مسل باي ذا واي كاني انجليشي ختزارب دلخي جن تقرينيا هون ناي بحكي صبو سلازهونه كتبابع كدلي حجون إن حواسكي نتوم تخاتاتلتي إنجليش تقرينيا نبرك خاتعللنا دبلت سخوين سمعني سلازي انتاي تقربتي تتقبريو تساعبر كتو أبتي تساتف اللود اللخ عملي.
يأكل كبهال كولوسي. Wow, this is going to be challenging, but I'm going to say it in English and you're going to help me integrate now. So when you say Yaakil, you know, there's different levels of Yaakil, which is number one, first thing first, is the grassroots movement. It belongs to all Eritreans inside and outside. So it's a movement that really says Yaakilna. Meaning that enough with this صراعات, enough with this and we're just basically saying we're going to stand up for the people who are unable to stand up for themselves, just the people in Eritrea and the Eritrean refugees in Ethiopia, Sudan, but Libya as a low malatiu. So that's one. So it doesn't belong to me or individually. The other part is the Baito Yaakil is a group of individuals, voluntary individuals who really represent their communities and wanted to do work for the people in the diaspora as well as the people in Eritrea and Eritrean. So my really contribution that I would say, and I shouldn't, but is to mobilize or engage the youth. من أساسي involved كن قبرهم فتنا لهم مالتي. When I say من أساسي كبل كل خصي, not the ones only born here, but as well as those who recently migrated to the Western world, as well as those who are in Africa who are able to speak up and advocate themselves as well. So I hope to inspire many, many young people and engage them, whether it's on social media, whether it's donating their professional capability to the needy, whether it's really lobbying for them and their local governments and constituency in many capacity, providing healthcare advice, mental healthcare, and many things. So I hope to inspire many, many young people to join this grassroots movement. And if it is their inspiration, to join as well Baito Yaakil.
يأنيلنا تسفى جبر أنا ونا حالات كم زي خماخي أبت علامة كساتفون أبركتو أم كجبر تسفى جبر كم زي سخون تسفى تجبروا يدر لخ مالتي أمنت حجي أبزي سوشيال ميديا وانترنت في خي حدا خبتي أبز وان زي أسكا فخوينو دلو ويوني أريد زربلو زرلو مزي مس أب إثيوبيا ترعيه بفلاي دم أب تجرايز ترعيه ناي ورار ناي وشقاوي مفحفحن زرعيه زمصኦ نصبرا متእትታው ናይ መንግስቲ ኤርትራ ኣብውን ዘምጽኦ ማሕሰይቲ ኣብ ሰባትን ኣብ ገለን ዘተኮረ ኮይኑ ይርከባሉ እቲ ብቐጻሊ ዝዝረበሉን ዝርግሓሉን ደሎ መዳይ ኣብዚ እዋን እዚ እውን ገሊኦም ነዚ ኮይኑ ከሎ እንታይ ድብል ኣተሓሳስባሎም ኤሪትራ ፈርስት ዝብል ሕመረት ደለዎ ኣዘራርባ ንሓስ እንታይ ኢና ከም ኣተኩሮናሲ እቲ ዝያዳ ኣብ ኤርትራ ደይከውን ዋላ ንዛረበሉ ዝብልለው ሓደ እውን ከም እስኹን ሓንቲ ካብቶም ካብኡ ዝገበሩ ኮሜንትን ስለዝኾንኪ ኤሪትሪያ ፈርስት ክበሃል ከሎሲ እንታይ ማለት እዩ ስለምንታይ እዩ ዝእዋን ዝኸ ኤሪትሪያ ፈርስት ይበሃል ኣሎ
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I say Eritrea first is just a call to action to refocus our energy, our advocacy, a call to action to focus about Eritrean families who are conscripted into the indefinite national family, Eritrean families who have family members who are in prison, who have disappeared, to focus on Eritrean families whom their children, 16, 17-year-old children have been really drafted. Eritrean families who are really stuck in Tigray, Addis Ababa, Sudan, Libya. Eritrean families who are struggling in famine. Eritrean families who are impacted by COVID-19. Eritrean families whom education has been really indefinitely suspended during this oppression time. So this was our calling for the justice seekers on the outside the diaspora world. We were really focusing on these topics. And over the last several months, we saw a shift that came into the Eritrean army entering to Ethiopia and the massacre that happens. And obviously, my heart really bleeds for many, many Tigrayan and Ethiopian families, that are really going through this. We share the compassion, but it was a bit challenging to observe this, that energy was literally directing from focusing Eritrean families to advocating for our neighbors. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't advocate for our neighbors, but it seems that over the last 20 years, we have failed to mobilize our own diaspora folks. This is the last 2 years that we've actually seen uptake of involvement of Eritrean community. Now, when that is split into supporting another group or another entity or another neighbor, are we really focusing and remaining all about our purpose? So when I say Eritrea first, it comes from a heart of let's just remain within our purpose and our advocacy. It's not any call to say we do not care about what happens to our neighbors. We're not saying this, we're taking any revenge against them. Our hearts hurt, as well as our families who are stuck in this conscripted military and they're there in a war that they don't want to partake in. Do we advocate for them, or do we just demonize them as people who are not part of our families as well? So this call is more of a refocus to really energize our resources, our capabilities to speak out on the platforms, to really what Isaias and his regime is doing to the Eritrean people. So it's more of a call to action rather than just to say, I don't care about my neighbors. We condone everything that happens in our neighbor and to the Ethiopian people.
I know where you're coming from. سلامتاي كم دبهال دلو تقلص يصنحكون كابيته بغيسك خم دله خردعن له عقمنا ريسورسنا حصير سلازخونه ابز وان زخاني اب قرب كب جميرنا موني تي stretch نغبرالنا يختبل دلخي I do understand that ግን at the same time is Eritrea قدامنت ويون Eritrea first ትብል ስሎጋን ሲ ሓዳሽ ኣይኮነትን we are living it in America ወይ እውን ነርና ኣብቲ ዝሓለፈ 4 ዓመት ናይ ትራምፕ administration እዚ ኣብ ግምት እቲ ሕጂ ሲ እቲ without merit ትኸውን እዛ ስሎጋን ወይ እውን ምስ ካልእ ክትርጎም ትኽእል ድያ ኢልክ ትሓስብ ዶ?
That's a really good question. So if we look at the American political sphere and understand when people say America first, although when you just take the verbatim translation, it comes very patriotic. However, the way it's been used is to really reflect superiority for one group to some subordinate inferior group. In this case, Eritrea first is not any slogan that says I'm superior than any group. Eritrea first is let's remember who the first people we're trying to help. It's a reminder, a little bit of a nudge to say Tom additatna حجي زريو زي broadcast بزعبا منينا نزارب زعبهم دينا نزارب توم كالوت توم يوم كل غزي نتقال حزبي نكينيا كنمقب نسودان كنمقب نخلومسي بعلم توم يوم what are we saying to them? You know, their kids are really stranded at home. Who are we educating, right? Whose children are we condemning? دقوم يوم وفيرهم زلو تجددوا. Meaning, see, is Isaias Sarawit Khanabul Kolanasi? Who are we calling Isaias Sarawit? The Kominat, the Kom, the Kanayam, Hawatanayam, Hawat, you know, there are our sisters, brothers, fathers, sons, uncles, cousins who are really forced to do this. Again, you know, this I don't want this to go into a negative interpretation that I'm supporting to what these people are doing, but rather to understand them. These are also victims of Isaias and his regime. So what we need in order to bring change is a unity up front. And that unity comes by focusing about Eritrean families. So when we say Eritrea first, is to really, number one, for those who are watching us inside Eritrea, to remind them, you still remain our priority. You're our number one cause, and we will fight for you until death do us apart. That's a reminder. Number two, for the diaspora to say is that we barely have any resources and we can get our own brothers and sisters in diaspora to join us, to do anything to make a change, because majority of these people are remaining in silent. We can't even get them to join, let alone split our resources to energize an outside group, right? We pray and sympathize and empathize and share compassion. But we are very limited in resources. So when we say something like that, it has no parallel negative connotation to what America is saying, America first. America first is a very prejudiced, a way to feel people superior than a minority group. This is not the case. It does not hold the same value of words or interpretation.
So I'll argue when we're gonna take it from the other side of people who say, what are you saying about Eritrea first? For example, تأشمو زبلو لوغا ليام حجي قداماي كم زبلكي قداماي priority ناتي عدنا درلو يختبل تصانيحكي. And there are people at the same time دبلو قداماي تصلاعينا إسياسي. They are even arguing with you on that topic when we see it in social media. What are you guys saying? And does this relate? Eritrea قدامنا كتبلن قداماي صلاعينا حتبلن حزبنا اي قدامن كبلتي ابينا ان زنسلسته intersect زغبرا.
Yeah. I think in order to answer this question, we have to look back our historic experience, what Eritrea has been over the last 100 years, to give it a historical background so we can learn something from it. Because we don't learn from our history and learn from our lessons, we really can't make a positive progress in the future. I couldn't agree more. Isaias is our number one enemy for all Eritreans, including those who are supporting him. their number one enemy is Isaias. There's no disagreement on that. Now, the disagreement or the differentials is that how to bring about that change and how to remove Isaias, right? Because Isaias has deliberately woven our issues within our children, within our family, using our troops, using our families as his tool to do his own agenda or to really manifest his evil work. Historically, when we look at from the English era in Eritrea, many outsiders say Eritrea can't exist on its own, right? And that's kind of creating a division among us. Eritrea should belong part of it to Sudan, Eritrea should belong into Ethiopia. And then there comes the birth of Mahabar Andinet, right? And that came from a pure fear of that was played by an outsiders, where religion is a very, very deep part of our practice, right? So a lot of people join Mahabar Andinet, and let's admit this, majority of Highland livers are Mahabar Andinet. It's not few people who really hijacked this plan and all these other things. A lot of people who feared about the threat of their faith as an Orthodox Christian really joined soon to learn that the Orthodox king in Ethiopia was to deceive them. Everybody was deceived, right? Many of our great-grandparents, parents have really didn't see this. All they thought was that, hey, we're going to keep our faith and we're going to remain that way. Why not go with them? Sooner or later, we lost our independence over that ideology. Hence the learning of involving outsiders to resolve our internal issue. And moving forward to 1972, 74, and 1980, where EPLF really killed the entire ELF movement with the joint movement of TPLF. So when you're looking at it, again, another historical moment where we're involving outside party to resolve our own issue. And because TPLF and ELF couldn't really entangle themselves or separate themselves after independence, here comes the 1998 issue again. And now we're really trying to resolve the internal enemy with an outside help. It's the inevitable insanity that we're repeating the same cycle and expecting a different outcome. So when I say this is that, yes, okay, so we collaborate with others and we remove Isaias. What's the bigger price tag that comes with it? Many Eritreans are not convinced. In fact, Eritreans in Eritrea are not even convinced of this plan. Majority of the diaspora are not convinced of this plan. But however, let's really focus about our people, because the solution is at home, within us. Those people who work for Isaias are tired of Isaias. What they're waiting for is our unity to say, we're going to be there with you. We're going to cross this path together. We're going to bring this change together. So why are you bringing an outsider? What's the price tag that's really coming along? So we're going to really fight our people? Is that what we're proposing? So that's a bit of a challenge if we don't take a lesson from our ancestors who've been deceived, who really thought they could bring change from an outsiders. And we take that away and take it our lesson here in this era and make the change, because the change is united Eritrea, putting Eritrean families at first. And that by itself will eliminate Isaias. Isaias will go down if we reunite together. And that's it. That's all the solution it comes down to.
Perfect. موب كم زتبلي زلخي كاب تاريخنا إريترا نايكال إديكونون نا إريترا نجزء رسا كاب تاريخنا نا محبر عند الندنا برجود داي بهايمانوت بالكا نهزبي إريترا ما يتخيلين يهانا بالكا سوقي أكل هي بتسع عن شمونتن وانتلاقي موحجون درجات مساس على استراتيجي إنا نتكلم لنا كاب تاريخنا نمهار سلزي كل أبوت له بتيكون من قد نخيد خاتم لدى الخي يعني اللي نتحتهم من لاسكي أبزو أنا زيت دعابي challenge نانتاي مززور له حج حدش regional دهوني atmosphere تفتير له مالسي أب سودان ديو أب إثيوبيا ديو أب جبسي حجون إريترام نايتي قبل نايتي region وين نايتي كبابة تكون تحسب على إريترا قبل كله يسياسة فورك مالتي بزيا إذا أب قمت أدخي تعاد عادي challenge نانتاي.
I think our biggest challenge is going to be two parts of it. Eritrea وشت Eritrea زلو تمنى إسي ني Eritrea ني إثيوبيا وريدوسي I'm listening. It's going to be a long journey for them before they come back. I fear that Isaias has always had a mindset of unity with Ethiopia, but Eritrea as its own separate state, but he wants to dabble and control both countries because he really believes in this Ethiopian empire, right? Like not as a government, but as an Ethiopian empire. And he wants to lead that empire and from Asmara is the way he sees it. Again, this birth of ideology came from the 70s and 80s, where they collaborated with TPLF to attack the other members of Eritrea who were fighting for the freedom of Eritrea. So my biggest concern at this point is that we will go into further deep integration of military forces among Ethiopia. That's one big fear. If it hasn't already happened to a degree. And which that means is that really further puts the youth in destitute and desperation and literally not objecting to that. So they'll find opportunity to escape, right? They're going to put that Ethiopian uniform and take every opportunity to escape. They probably will get some titles somewhere in Ethiopia and continue to exist, which will be a better life than their conscripted lives in Ethiopia. So they will continue to accept what's been subjected to them. So this is scary in many levels, which is the sovereignty of Eritrea is an imminent threat. Number two is that our people continue to be destitute and a dilution of identity, right? So that will just kind of will happen in that scale. The second part in the diaspora is many level of splinters from among the justice seekers who want to bring change to Eritrea, which is a fundamental deepening ideology where it comes, we should work with one group, and others who say, no, we should work among us.
Are we not there already?
We're kind of now debating, right? Like the ideology. I think there's still love and there's still connection. There's frustration from both ends, right? And I very much understand this. And I will acknowledge, I myself are very frustrated as well, right? But what really differentiates the justice seeker community is that there's love among us. There is respect among us. And I'm not confusing those wolves, wearing the sheepskin. I'm talking about those really who care and fight for the cause, right? They might think this idea is better, they have a different understanding than I do, and I might think this idea is better because I have a different understanding that I do. But there's one thing across a genuine justice seeker. There's love and sacrifice and deep compassion that goes for our people. So this ideology differential might be on the surface, not really fundamentally. Eventually, I think through dialogue, this could come to a place of common understanding, communication, and collaboration. Again, we have to be very, very wary of the folks who are really walking around among us with a different ulterior motives and agenda. But we have to develop a discernment of identifying those. I'm not throwing this to be speculative, but in every struggle, it's not unique to Eritrea. Even America, everywhere else, there are infiltrators from an outside and within who really want to implement their own agenda. But you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And the reason I'm doing it. And those who really find themselves on caring deeply about their people and wanting to bring the right changes and imagining past Isaias, right? The whole idea is, okay, we bring change, Isaias. What's next is what's really separating us. Mm-hmm. And that's what the memes is going, hey, let's just remove him, we worry about it next. And those who say, no, 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 how we remove him makes a difference because there's a bigger crisis past that. So I would say those genuine justice seekers, I don't think they're fundamentally different yet. I think it's just a really nice conversation, a sit down understanding, and a dialogue can heal it. But the others who are just far right or far left are they will always be there and they'll always be with us as long as we do this.
Of course, but still, what is the غوديلو دولو انتي تبلي أبز وان زي وش دولو كم زخد قلت يتصنع كيو نزناي أبز زولو ناي من قصاص ناي فتحون أوروبتي أبريكي الله كن انتي what is the main core تيت أجمع زلنا beside ISAS there is ناي محنسة ناي مسرح أبتي التميدا ما يبت إحنا لنا أبتي last سرعة يبلنا لنا سلازسي انتي تيت أجمع
you know, Eritrean people for the last literally 80, 90 years have continuously been deceived by outsiders and insiders. Okay, that deceiving practice have really created a lack of trust among us. That's it, right? The English, the Italians, Haile Selassie, Mengistu, Isaias, Wala Abdaga Ethiopian rulers like, you know, the TPLF, EPRDF, and the Derg, and the Haile Selassies, every one of them have deceived these people and have really created a culture of lack of trust among us. And that's what we lack in the biggest thing of it. So we prioritize tribalism, we prioritize religion, we prioritize villages and many other things above all one nationalism of Eritreanism, right? So when a brother or sister, like for example, even at a discussion among us, if I don't agree with you, it's mara, like, you know, you are like it's so deep and very suspicious. So the Abitz Agam that's stopping us from uniting together is really breaking that and taking that leap of faith. I am going to trust you, even if I don't agree with what you think is ideal to bring a change. So nasunta ilna, and we agree to disagree on certain things, but continue to work with each other to bring about change is what's going to bring change. The Abitz Agam Abdaga Zalo, Sarat Isaias, Abrisina Izolo. Tafalalina ina zallana. If I don't accept an idea, I'm going to cancel my brother and sister. I'm going to discredit anything that they think or do. And that shouldn't be it. Sometimes we may not understand why they think that way, and it's their personal path they've gone through. But to continue to really work with each other for one purpose, a purpose is to better Eritrea. Removing Isaias is one step. Uniting Eritrea is the second step, okay? And the third step is a prosperous, liberous Eritrea. And we have to work this in a big goal and not just the short-term goal. And then after that, we turn out to be Syria or other countries who really are so fragmented, or the future Yugoslav, as you would think. Mm-hmm. So in order to prevent that, the diaspora really needs to come across the table and communicate with each other and trust each other and dialogue. And on certain topics, they don't agree. Just continue to disagree on certain things, but to really reiterate, continue to work with each other, prioritizing Eritrea and Eritrean families.
Indeed, leap of faith comes into Valkyo. There should be a leap of faith to start somewhere, to go somewhere. At the same time, it is the same thing. How about this leap of faith and Eritrean first would be a groundbreak or bridge. Nimangisi says, well, they just support him, we're saying, right? And they could be part of the what you categorize as enemy in the first place. So how about we take a leap of faith, Abni, and Eritrean first, or United Eritrea, to bring us together?
I think that's a really good question, and I'll share my own personal story on this. Is that, you know, Sir'at Hagdafsi, it's been really, really challenging for me to really understand people who supported Hagdaf. I got to a level at one point in my life to absolutely not even share a meal with a person who supports Sir'at Isaias. That I have kind of softened that outlook when I opened my ears to understand why they feel that way, because I viewed them with people who have no compassion, right? People who do not care about their family, people who don't prioritize the sovereignty of Eritrea. Now, I'm not saying there are no individuals who really are like that, but there are people who really just kind of like, well, I'm afraid that Eritrea would split into many groups, and I can't imagine anything past Isaias. That's why I'm kind of like lukewarm, just kind of supporting this. I think Eritrea first, it's a unifying voice. It really brings everyone, because we're really screaming and crying and kicking and putting all of our resources, efforts, and passion. Eritrean, so when you say Eritrea first, it's a reaffirmation what we're doing. So I really believe this is a reminder to all of us to say, hey, I'm doing this for our family as well as you are. And I think this could reach across the aisle of a lot of Eritreans who are standing aside, trying to figure out where to go, who to join. Those who really are so fed up with Isaias but haven't seen any better alternative solutions, and those who are just kind of like silent. This is going to reach many of us, because this is a common ground when we say we're doing this for our families, for your family and my family, and that's a cause that can reunite everyone. Now, I've had a conversation with my brothers and sisters who say, well, we can do both of them. Right? Like, ولا أنا زوم أحواتنا بتقرأي زلو كنحجزهم نقلينا لازم Eritrean كنجبر. Good for them. I will never stop anyone that says that I can do this, right? I myself is humble enough to say I have limited resources and very limited capacity to do this. And I'm going to take every little bit that I have to really focus about my family, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents who have no one to retire and staying at home by themselves. I'm going to focus about that. I'm going to speak for those Sawa kids who've been drafted early, under 18 years old. I'm going to focus about the women who are really being sexually exploited in Sawa. I'm going to focus about these kids who have been closed at home for the last year, who have not been getting any education. I'm going to focus about those families impacted by famine and COVID-19. Because I'm only one Emnet and I have very limited resources, and I'm going to do that. And I think many of us are in that dilemma, like, where do we focus in? And I applaud many Tigrayan folks who really loudly have spoken, have really stood up on behalf of their families, on behalf of their victims. I applaud them. I really think that we can take a lesson from them and their unity. Yes. But it's hard for me to digest when we can barely scratch the surface, the agony of Eritrean families for the last 20 years, to be able to also have, hey, I'm going to take some of this to do that, because you can't be all for everyone. You can't be a master of everything, but you have to precisely focus your purpose. For those who can, more power to them. There's no one that would stop them. But for those like myself with limited resources, I kind of wanted to reach out and say, there are many of you like myself who really want to get together and do something for our people.
ኣብቲ መወዳእታ ገጽና እንዲና ንመጽእ ዘለና ዳርጋ ኩሉ ካቨር ጌርና ኢና እምነት ኣብ መወዳእታ ተኣሽሙ እዚ ኣብዚ እዋን ዝደሎ ኩነታት ናይ ሰብኣዊ መሰላት ምግሃስ ኣብ ኤርትራ ናይ እስራትን ናይ ዘይሰብኣዊ ኣተሓሕዛ ናይቲ ኣብ ከተማታት ደለውን ህዝቢ ከምዚ ትብልዮ ጽናዕኪ ጉዱድ ናይ ንኣሽቱ ናብ ሃገራዊ ኣገልግሎትን ንዓመታት ዝኸደ ኣሎን እዚ ኩሉ እናረኣዩ ጌና ክቅየሩ ዘይከኣሉ ኤርትራውያን ወይ እውን እዚስ ጌጋ እዩ ዓገብ ደይብሉ ደለዉ ኤርትራውያን ኩሉና ኣብ ዝወፃእ ደለና እንታይ ክትብልዮም ትደሊ እንታይ መልእኽቲ ከተሕልፍ ትደሊ?
Oh man. This is a really good question because I think anyone that have seen my advocacy over the last few years, I have been such a harsh critique of right? And I'm going to humble myself to say, wake up, right? Wake up before it's too late. Whatever your purpose is, whatever the reasons that you're tolerating, tomorrow there will not be Eritrean. So whatever your purpose is to remain in silence or to support this, you have to find a way to make a difference. Because the Eritrean youth is destitute and hopeless. And what are you doing? Are you clapping, supporting this? Are you celebrating the defeat of an enemy? I celebrate with you. But at a cost of who? نمانينا نسدد نمانينا نقتل أحواتنا عديتاتنا تأميون أبوتاتنا أريقوم. Who are you supporting? Please reevaluate your conviction. There will not be Eritrea if you continue this. So I really, really, really like to appeal to them. Please reevaluate your purpose. بزعبا إريترامبر بزعبا حدا سب أيكونن. إريتراوينت إساياس مخان دقافي إساياس مخان مالت أيكونن. إريتراوينت is to support your brother, Eritreawit sister, Eritreawit abotatna, Eritreawit additatna. That's what it means. Do not mistake support of Isra'at Isaias for Eritreawinat. So I beg and plead that you really find a purpose within you to make a change within the Eritreawi life. Because tomorrow we will have no Eritrea for them and for us. So that's my message. And for those who really are thinking about, hey, I really want to support and I don't know how to, there are many, many, many young individuals who are really making an advocacy. One of my favorite that I always talk about is One Day Siyum, our sister Vanessa Tsahaye, who's really advocating for Siham Ali Abdu, who is celebrating, who has celebrated a birthday this week. And this month we all get to, I should have worn my purple to really commemorate her birthday. But there are many professionals who are really networking to make a change within the diaspora, as well as the Eritreans and the refugee camps and within Eritrea as well. Get one of them. If you don't know how to get involved, always reach out to me. I will find a way to get you involved, but get involved. Don't sit still. And all I'm saying is get involved.
Okay, Emnet, wake up before it is too late. Get involved with Tiblokumala, wait Tiblanala, Tsabo Mahrin Ma'adan Modatay, Bana Tadali Nebarab Setit, Zinai Elal Miss Emnet, Men say Emnet, Abzita Fatsimuno, Men say Emnet, Bez Agatami, Neseti Dahab Kna Adil, Bisim Kulum Tahatil Kamasgna Kifotu. أبكال جزء بخالة حسوس كأنه كهب يغنيلنا قبل كده لي.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Emnet. We hope to see you again and talk to you more in different issues. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye.